Well, good morning again. It's an honor to be able to share with you this morning. I don't get to do it very often, but God is faithful, and when I do, He seems to always give me some things to talk about. If you know me, you probably think I always have things to talk about, but like real things that you would want to hear about from up here. So we're going to bring up the first slide. So here we are. It's the end of 2017, and you've probably noticed over the last couple of weeks in the news and on social media, everyone likes to talk about the big stories and what's been going on in 2017. I've been hearing a lot about who was the most Googled. It actually was Matt Lauer. He came in here at the end to take over the most Googled spot, away from Hurricane Irma. So we hear about the big celebrity breakups of the year. Lots about President Trump. A lot of information from the last year. North Korea, the hurricane destruction that you heard about from our kids who are planning a mission trip. The horrible massacres we had in shootings in Vegas and the church in Texas. And I just saw in the news this morning that in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, there is a shooting that took place. The solar eclipse was super big for us this past year. That was a lot of fun. Terrorism is haunting us constantly. Snapchat reigns in the social media world. It's taken over by storm, for any of you that don't know what it is. And the Me Too movement. Lots of stuff that was going on that everyone's reflecting on from the past year. But last week, luckily, I got one of my women's magazines, and as I read the front of it, it says, Fresh Start. Here we go into the new year. And it's the makeover issue. So I can make over my dinners. I'm going to upgrade those. I'm going to conquer my closet this year. Be a better negotiator. I guess that might come in handy. Get a great night's sleep this year. And most of all, plan your best year. I guess on a couple of pages in here, they're going to tell me how to do that.
Make copies.
Yeah, make copies. Yeah, I'll pass those out next week. I'm actually not really one for resolutions. I think it's definitely a good idea to have some goals for the next year. I think it's a better idea to be open to what God has planned for you for the next year. And I think that when we do a bunch of New Year's resolutions, first of all, we usually don't keep them. But second of all, I think that we get in the way of letting God just be God. And when I was thinking about the sermon, I know that this is not lectionary scripture, but what just kept coming back to me was our Old Testament reading from Lamentations 3:22 to 23. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for His compassions never fail. They are new every single morning, every day that you get up. Great is your faithfulness. The translation that I'm most familiar with typically says, for His mercies never fail. You guys know that one? Which I love the word mercies, but when I went to the NIV, I think compassions is just a sweet word from our Father. And in Hebrew, compassions is loving kindness. It's our Father's loving kindness for us each and every day. This whole idea of let God be God, I got from my dear friend Melody. Melody has more faith and trust in God than anyone I've ever known. Melody's my age, and she lost her sight when she was 19 years old. So she knew what it was like to see for 19 years, and now she's lived for over 20 years completely blind. And Melody lives by herself, and every single day she has to cling to this verse, because every day can be a challenge for her just to figure out what to do for that day, just to get through her daily things. And she has been a sister friend to me for the last 3 or 4 years and walked through some really hard times in my life. And she would always just say to me, Shana, just let God be God. And then other times she would say, Shana, let God be God. He doesn't need your help. Which is a good reminder, right? And I'm not doing this perfectly, but having that ring in my head definitely has been a good focus for me. When I think back to last year on January 1st, there are several things that popped up in my life that I would have never seen coming. First of all, not all of you know this, maybe if you're new here, but I had a total hip replacement in June. And on January 1st of last year, I definitely did not foresee that I would be having a total hip replacement. I was 46. I was definitely having some pain that I didn't know where it was coming from. And when I got this news in February, I was scared out of my mind. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't imagine how I could go through such a major surgery and still do my job here and take care of my 2 teenage girls, which requires a lot of driving. I feel like I drive all the time. Take care of my house, take care of my yard. It was just like too much to even conceptualize. And I scheduled it out several months ahead so I could prepare. I was very in control of all the preparations. And then I had the surgery, and it was way harder than I would have ever anticipated. They kept telling me, you're young, it's gonna be fine, you'll come through this easily. But if you've had a joint replacement, any of you, it's pretty challenging for the first couple of weeks. But God just took over. He stepped in. I had all these people praying for us. We had an army of people coming to our house, helping with meals and cleaning and laundry and getting my girls taken care of and getting them places. And I realized that God used this situation to show me that He is in control. Not only did He take away my daily pain, but He showed me a really important lesson that I can ask for help, which is really hard for me. Some of you know that, but that's okay, that it's okay to ask for help. And that people, when you let them, are so willing to step in and take control. One of the other things that I did not realize was going to happen on January 1st was this guy, Pastor Kevin Starcher, who would come into our lives in March and change everything here at Covenant. For those of you that don't know, our pastor, Reverend Kevin Starcher, is new to us. He just came last March after we had been without a permanent pastor for a couple of years. And I'm just amazed how God had known that all along. He was preparing Kevin from the time Kevin was a little boy to come and be our pastor here at Covenant Presbyterian Church. And I certainly had no control over that, right? Even though I had a lot of responsibility here at Covenant, and I was trying to do my best to let God work through me and help keep things together, He had a better plan, and the plan has arrived. And I can tell you while Kevin isn't here, I know you already all know it, that he is an amazing pastor. He is strong in every single area that is important. And I think there is a lot of momentum and excitement for what's happening here at Covenant. So let God be God. He did it, right? He brought him. My other thing was this past fall, my oldest daughter, Annabelle, who's 19, had a huge crisis with her mental health and really spiraled downward, and it resulted in a couple of hospitalizations and things feeling very out of control. And as a mother, I was at the end of myself. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't figure out what was best to do. I felt like I had failed on every course that we had tried to take to get her the help she needed. And I think God just really had to give me a big shove out of the way and get her somewhere where Mom was not trying to be in control, but God was in control. And it has been an amazing journey of him sending us prayer warriors, sending us the right doctors, giving us the exact help that we needed. And again, I just needed to let God be God. And I'm sure that you can all think of ways yourself that God surprised you in the past year. So I want you to think through that for a moment. Think of at least one way that something happened that you didn't see coming and that God took over and used it for good in your life. Because those are the kinds of things we need to cling to as we move into the next year. What all of those things in my life had in common were God was number one, he was in control, Covenant, our church, was huge in providing me the community that I needed. So I know a lot of people say, I don't need to go to church. I do God my own way. Or, I can meet God other places. I'm here to tell you that that's a bit of a lie. You need to come to church because you need to build community and you need to connect with God for when things in your life come up that are totally unexpected. And you need to let God work. A big part of that we studied this past year, or since fall, with the Into-Me small group study. How many of you here were participating in the Into-Me? Lots of you. I think close to most of our congregation. The Into-Me is a study by Kyle Idleman that really just was talking about coming to the end of ourselves, dying to ourselves like Jesus told us in the New Testament, and letting God be God, letting God take control. And in the Into-Me, there were some stories that we followed, 4 stories of people who all had pretty dramatic encounters with God and with their faith, and it made them come to the end of themselves. And some of us have maybe had those huge encounters that are big like that, but others of us have just small things every day that we're facing. So I want to start by reading the Beatitudes. This is the New Testament scripture that the Into-Me was based on. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and he sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So Kyle Idleman took 4 verses from the Beatitudes, and he used those as the foundation for how we can get to the end of ourselves. And I participated in a couple of different groups during this small group study, and I heard from many of you who were in other studies. And part of what I heard is that you love the community of small groups, so yay God, that's what we're supposed to be doing. That you enjoyed the content, but you want to know more. You want to know, how do we take these dramatic stories that were shared with us, and how do we apply those in our life? And I think as we move into 2018, these are exactly the verses that we need to reflect on, to know how we get to the end of ourselves and let God be God. So our first theme was broken to be whole, and that was Matthew 5:3 again. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And all this sounds a little crazy, really, and it did to the people at the time, especially the Pharisees and Sadducees, because Jesus was talking about how the lowly and less were going to have the rewards and live abundant life. And we just have to remember that we are the lowly and the less, and this is speaking right to us. There's a quote by Kyle Idleman in the book where he says, "The good news is that God makes the broken whole. He takes the overlooked, the undervalued, the left out, the written off, the damaged and destroyed, and then he does what only he can do. God loves to make the broken beautiful." And I can testify to that because God has taken some really, really broken places in my life, physically broken with a hip, spiritually broken, wondering where God is sometimes, mentally broken, anguish over my daughter. In every one of those situations, he has turned for his good and for his beauty. So your life application from this one, as you move into 2018, I have news for you. You're all broken. There's something broken about every single one of us. And instead of saying, "I'm fine, I'm good," and putting on a face, we need to own our brokenness, acknowledge it, and let it show. Because there are a lot of people surrounding you that are waiting for you to admit to that will come alongside you and support you in your brokenness. Brokenness is beautiful when we do it together. Our next verse was about mourning to be happy. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. That was from Matthew 5:4. The quote I want to use for this one is from the Bible. So this is the best word, from James 4:8-10. "Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." Again, we're all broken, and part of that brokenness is we all face sin daily. And sins can be small sins to big sins, but you know what? God really sees them all exactly the same. Today, we confessed our sins before God, corporately, together. But I would suggest that every morning, you need to own your sin, you need to face it, and you need to give it to God. His compassions are new every morning. Give him your sin each and every day. Next was becoming humble to be exalted. Matthew 5:5. "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." I thought there was a really great quote in the book, The End of Me, by Warren Wiersbe. He's a pastor and a contemporary writer. Some of you have maybe read some of this stuff. And he points to the Pharisees. And I'm actually going to, now that I'm done with it, I'll put this book in our church library. I highly recommend, if you want to go deeper and further in the small group study, this was a great companion to it and really gets into more. And we get some good quotes like this. "The great sin of the Pharisees was hypocrisy based on pride. Their religion was external, not internal. It was to impress people, not to please God. They bound people with heavy burdens, while Christ seeks to set us free. They loved titles and public recognition and exalted themselves at the expense of others." So your life application here is grace. We sang about grace this morning. That is such a beautiful song, Grace to Grace, that talks about God's great love and grace for us. So in 2018, I suggest that you, first of all, embrace grace. Grace is for you, every single one of you. You are worthy, you are loved by God. There is nothing that you can think or do that will separate you from that love. So accept his grace. But in doing so, you need to also give grace. And I'm talking about not on a huge level, but on a daily level, like when someone cuts you off in traffic, if you flip them off, not grace. Not grace. If you're yelling at other drivers in the car while your kids are in the back seat, probably not very graceful either. Holding grudges against friends or estranged family members that you just can't deal with. You need to get a little grace there. You see what I'm saying? I think every single day we can find opportunities to give the grace that God has given us. So our last slide, and ushers, you have a little job for me. I'm going to have you start on that. The last theme that Kyle Eidelman gave us from the Beatitudes was authentic to be accepted. Matthew 5:8 tells us, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." The idea of being authentic has been pretty huge in our culture and society the last couple of years. There's all kinds of books on it. There's suggestions on how you can be the real you and how you can be authentic. And I liked Kyle Eidelman's quote from the book. He says, "Pure in heart, it means you're living the blessed life when you stop worrying about the signs and the extravagant advertising and all the effort expended trying to convince people you're something different than you are. Being authentic is when your inside matches your outside." Do any of you struggle with performing? I do. A lot in my life. Like making sure I look like I have it all together. Making sure that people think I'm where I should be. I do it in front of my kids, I do it in front of my family of you. And being authentic to be accepted, to be pure in heart, is to stop that charade. You are loved by God just the way you are. You don't have to perform for God. His grace comes to you as a free gift. So let's stop performing in front of each other. Because just like we talked about before, community and being real with one another is the landscape where we can come together and support one another and be real. As we end this time together, I have a proposal for you. You've been given a little card, and I'm wondering what you need to give to God to be at the end of you. Is there something that keeps you separated from letting God have total control in your life? And you don't have to write it down right now, but I would suggest that you do write it down and you put it somewhere that you can see it every day so that you're reminded in the morning when you get up, your Father's mercies and compassions are new every day. Take that thing and give to him and lay it down. Find a way to just let God be God. My thing is control. So I'd ask that you even pray for me in that respect. I find it hardest with my kids, for sure. That's the area that it's hard for me to give that up. And I know that when I do, God gives me abundant life. He wants to take that on. He wants to carry it for me. So find your thing, and by tonight, write it down, and I'll be in prayer for all of you today, that he's able to really show you what you need to give to him in order to just let God be God. Now is the time in our service where